Hey, I'm Jeff. Welcome to Clutch City Chatter. Hey, before we get busy in today's video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Well, guys, here we are, 24 hours, actually less than 24 hours before the first pitch of the first game of round 2 as the Astros march their way to the 2022 World Series. So tomorrow afternoon at 2:30, the Astros will take on the Seattle Mariners. I think a lot of people are surprised to be playing the Mariners. I think most people expected the Toronto Blue Jays to win that series against the Mariners. And the Mariners really, man, they played some good baseball. The clinching game between Seattle and Toronto was just a crazy game, with Seattle being behind 8-1 and coming back to win 10-9. It's the most insane thing I've ever seen in baseball. And it just goes to show you what I had mentioned in my previous video, that Seattle will fight you tooth and nail to the end. So the Astros definitely have their hands full. I know that every year going into the playoffs, it really doesn't matter who the Astros are playing. I'm a nervous wreck. As much faith as I have in them, I know that, you know, baseball's a weird sport, and it's not always the case that the best team wins. You know, fluke things happen. Seattle just needs 3 wins. The Astros just need 3 wins too. But there's times when the Astros offense just disappears. So, you know, that's scary since they haven't played in about a week. A lot of times it takes a while to get your timing back. And so tomorrow afternoon, the Mariners will be pitching Logan Gilbert. Logan Gilbert isn't the ace of the Seattle team. That would be Luis Castillo. But Castillo is going to pitch Game 2. So Game 1 against Logan Gilbert, the Astros have not done very well against him this year. Logan Gilbert posted a 2.52 ERA in 25 innings against the Astros this year. So the Astros have had some issues, I guess, scoring runs against him. But of course, postseason is really the time that the Astros typically shine, and this will be the first postseason for most of the Mariners. Today I was reading an article on the Seattle Times that it was titled "The Seattle Mariners and Houston Astros do not like each other," and it mentioned that earlier this year, the Astros first base coach Omar Lopez and Mariners manager Scott Service were ejected, kind of going at each other. Two coaches really going after each other. Anyways, Scott Service is a former Houston Astro crappy catcher. He was horrible, and it seems he's probably made a better manager than he was ball player. That's for sure. But he's not very likable. I'm sure Seattle fans think he's great, but I think everywhere else they'll say that he's a jerk. And a lot of people's thoughts and beliefs are that he plays dirty. He actually tells pitchers to basically headhunt the opposing batters. It's not uncommon to see opposing hitters get drilled by a Seattle pitcher, and oftentimes leads to fisticuffs or benches emptying. Seattle, I think Seattle through the years have been pretty crappy. Felt like maybe like little brother to every big league team, and they feel like they have to, you know, exert their manliness. And if they can't win games, at least go out fighting. You know, take out the best player of the other team, something like that. I know the other day against the Toronto Blue Jays, they drilled George Springer. It was very close to his head, but he actually got his hand up, and surprised the heck out of me that it did not break his hand. He went down and he was in a lot of pain, and of course he wasn't the same after that. Struck out 3 or 4 times the next game. It's sickening, and I do fear some of that type of pitching to the Astros. Um, try to take out the big man, Jordan, or the little man, Jose Altuve. And I just would not be surprised. I'm not saying I want to see this at all, but I would not be surprised if there's one or two bench clearing brawls during this series because, as that article said, they don't like each other. And I think Seattle definitely they feel disrespected by all of all of baseball, and they feel like they have to keep showing how tough they are. And that all stems from their manager, who was a horrible, crappy baseball player, and so now he's trying to exact revenge on Major League Baseball through managing. And I realize what I'm saying is going to upset some people and maybe considered controversial to accuse a manager of being a headhunter, but I'm on record as saying that. All right, so the way the playoff format is set up, the first two games will be in Houston, both afternoon games. And the Astros starting pitchers will be Justin Verlander, game one. It still hasn't been officially announced that Framber will be starting game two. That's the general thought. But like I said in an earlier video, that Lance McCullers has a much better record starting at home in Houston than he does on the road. And Framber is pretty evenly matched road and home record. So I think that it's possible that the Astros would go ahead and pitch Lance McCullers in game two at home and save Framber for game three. Kind of seems like that would be the smart thing to do. I know a lot of times, though, Dusty Baker especially likes to ride with the one that got him there. And Framber had a much better season than Lance did. And so he feels that Framber probably deserves to be the second game starter more than Lance does. Sometimes I think you got to really do what's best for the team. I've been searching the internet all day trying to determine if the Astros have released their playoff roster, and it appears they haven't. And it's surprising to me with the games starting tomorrow afternoon. That they haven't announced their complete roster. But I'm really curious. I really want to know if Jake Myers has made the playoff roster and Hunter Brown. I feel pretty certain he has, but I want to find that out for sure. So I'm very anxious to see who who's made it and who hasn't. Has Phil Maton made the roster for the playoffs, or and Luis Garcia? I like Luis Garcia, but he's the fifth starter. We don't need five starters in the playoffs at any time. I think you've got better bullpen options, relief options, than putting Luis Garcia in there. Oh, one last note. Yesterday, I was watching the Padres and Mets. Joe Musgrove, former Astro pitcher, who has not had some very good things to say about the Astros recently, was pitching for the Padres, and he had an incredible game. He was pretty much mowing down the Mets, and I think it was in the seventh inning, the Mets manager, Buck Showalter, went out and spoke to the first base umpire, and the first base umpire then gathered all of the umpires together in a huddle, and they discussed something for a few minutes. And then they went up to Joe Musgrove and did a body search, basically, looking for foreign substances or fingernail files or who knows what they were thinking they might find. But yeah, they had him take his hat off, and they actually were rubbing behind his ears and on the side of his face, and checked his glove and his fingers, and there was nothing there. And the whole thing it took me back to 1986 when the Astros were facing the Mets in the playoffs, and it was Mike Scott just that year tormented the New York Mets. I mean, I haven't seen a pitcher dominate one team more than Mike Scott dominated the Mets. And the entire year, actually, every time they faced, uh, every time Mike Scott faced the New York Mets, the manager would have the ump check check Scott. They would check his glove, check his hat, check his fingernails, um, because the Mets kept saying that he was scuffing baseballs. But it ended the day before what should have been the last game of the series if the Astros had extended it to the final game. And in the final game, I guess it was a game 7, uh, the plan was for Mike Scott to pitch, and the Astros were leading in game 6 going into the ninth inning. And the announcers were saying, oh boy, the Mets are really in trouble because tomorrow they're going to be facing Mike Scott, and they can't do anything against Mike Scott. The ninth inning, the Mets had a huge rally and ended up winning the game. It went into extra innings, actually. Um, it was because they were scared to death, basically, of having to face Mike Scott the following day. And he was so much in their head, you know. Every time he faced them, they were asking the umpires to check for foreign substances. And so when I saw this last night, it brought those things back, and I was like, man, that's New York for you. You know, someone has success against a New York team, and they just automatically think, oh, that person's got to be cheating. And so it's a different manager, different players now, and all that. I was so happy to see Musgrove continued to mow them down, and he didn't take very kindly to that either. He made a not a very nice gesture after striking out the second batter he faced that inning after they had uh, inspected him. So he made a very not nice gesture to the Mets dugout, and I was glad to see that he continued to dominate them. And of course, the Padres went on to dominate the Mets in that game and won the series. And I was really, really quite happy. Not that I'm a huge Padre fan, but I'm certainly not a New York fan. Um, and I hate whiners and complainers. And that's the way the Mets came off. And it's the way the Yankees always come off also. Hoping and expecting the Astros to get past the Seattle Mariners, and more than likely, I think they'll be facing the Yankees in the ALCS. But who knows? Maybe the Cleveland Guardians, they may be too much for the Yankees. The Yankees might not get past them. Please be sure to hit the like, thumbs up button, and subscribe. I could really use it. All right. Thank you, and I will see you next time. And remember, swing for the fences!